It was the era when online forums were spreading rapidly among young people. Heavy metal music and its subcultures had become popular all over the world. In some of these forums, dark beliefs were glorified, blending with song lyrics and shocking stage performances. Curious minds with no boundaries began to take interest in these dark rituals, often without realizing it. Yet in Los Angeles, one young man was not just an observer of this darkness. He embraced it, nurtured it, and ultimately turned it into something horrifying. A ritual with a victim no one could ever have imagined, his own mother. The story of Moisés Meraz Espinoza, a nightmare that proves how darkness can quietly seep into the walls of a home. Emilia Espinoza was born in Mexico and migrated to the United States at a young age, hoping to build a better life. She settled in Maywood, Los Angeles County, establishing herself within a small but close-knit community. Working as a seamstress, she earned her living and was known as a quiet, diligent woman who earned the respect of those around her. In 1990, she gave birth to her only child, Moisés Meraz Espinoza. She devoted her entire life to raising him. Without the support of a partner or father figure, she showed remarkable determination in raising her child alone. Neighbors often spoke of the warm and loving relationship between mother and son. From the outside, they appeared to live a completely ordinary, small, and peaceful life. As Moisés grew, he became increasingly withdrawn. He had few friends at school and spent much of his time at the computer or listening to music. Heavy metal began as a hobby, but soon led him to darker subgenres. He became fascinated with artists like King Diamond, who explored satanic themes. Through people he met online, he developed an interest in occult teachings. Some online communities presented misleading and frightening ideas about Satanism as if they were real. In this digital space, he felt accepted and was gradually pulled deeper into this dark world. Although Emilia noticed these changes, she believed her son was simply going through a difficult adolescence. Despite arguments over music and late-night disputes, she remained patient with him. Neighbors recalled that Emilia always supported her son, keeping their home warm and nurturing no matter what. As his teenage years progressed, Moisés became emotionally unstable. His fascination with dark music and satanic symbols grew, and his perception of reality began to shift. He retreated from daily life, immersing himself entirely in this alternate world. Emilia often hoped her son's obsessions were temporary. As any mother would, despite her worry, she continued to love him unconditionally. She had fought for him since he was a child and did everything possible to repair the widening gap in their relationship. But in Moisés's mind, a dangerous process had begun. Constant exposure to content filled with violence, death, blood, and dark symbols had stopped being just a hobby. The line between fantasy and reality was slowly disappearing. Neither Emilia nor anyone around her could have predicted what this growing darkness inside Moisés would lead to. A mother's sacrifice and love would not be enough to stop him. Soon, in the quiet streets of Maywood, a tragedy no one could ever forget would unfold. As Moisés's fascination with darkness grew, life unexpectedly offered him a gift. In the middle of 2010, he met a young girl named Monica. While their meeting seemed coincidental, for Moisés it was a rebirth. Monica became the only light in his dark world. Despite all warnings from his occult friends online, he pursued this love because for the first time he felt normal with someone by his side. For the first time, he had hope for the future. Emilia noticed her son's happiness. The constant arguments at home had diminished. A quiet calm settled over the house. For the first time in a long while, Moisés smiled at his mother. Soon, the young couple began living together. They both worked at the same cookie factory. Co-workers described him as a dedicated, responsible, and disciplined young man. He even received a promotion within a short time. Everything seemed to indicate that Moisés was finally on the right path. Every morning they walked hand in hand to work, talking about their dreams for the future. Moisés decided to finish school, and Monica supported him in registering for classes. Perhaps a marriage, perhaps a family. Everything felt close, within reach. Only 3 months remained until classes started. Then, one day, just a single day, everything changed. That morning, Moisés had to leave for work 30 minutes early, so he left the house before Monica. A few hours later, he thought they would walk hand in hand again. But that morning, Monica stepped out without anyone to hold her hand. A car, a collision, thrown meters across the street. She didn't even make it to the hospital. Her life ended there. Monica's death extinguished the last light inside Moisés. He no longer had a reason to return to school or a reason to hope. From that day, Moisés's steps into darkness became irreversible. The real tragedy began here. After Monica's death, Moisés's life completely collapsed. Unable to cope with his grief, the young man turned to drugs, plunging himself rapidly into a vortex of darkness. After some time, he returned to his mother Amelia's home, but he was not alone. His painful memories, obsessive music, and dark thoughts returned with him. Gore and death metal once again shook the walls of the house. Moisés's depression and anger grew by the day. He rejoined the Satanic cult, whose members further manipulated him by linking Monica's death to a supernatural entity. Moisés now felt that he belonged to the path of darkness. Under the influence of drugs, he began to lose control completely. Even when Amelia merely asked him to lower the music, arguments escalated to terrifying levels. Everyone in the neighborhood spoke about the fear the mother lived in. The family chose to look the other way. The only exception was Moisés's cousin, Liliana Rivera. She was the only person trying to pull him out of the abyss. At times, Moisés wanted to trust her, but by the end of 2010, Liliana had come to a very clear realization. Moisés had become someone who could harm himself or others at any moment. Darkness had consumed his entire being. February 2nd, 2011. This was the day everything irreversibly fell apart for Moisés and his mother Amelia. That morning, Moisés was lost in his room, under the influence of drugs, engulfed by the screaming sounds of death metal. Amelia, returning home exhausted from work, immediately noticed the walls vibrating with the relentless noise. She knocked on the door, asking him to lower the music. This would be her final warning. Moisés could no longer control his rage. The argument quickly escalated to the darkest extremes of violence. He drew the curtains, turned the music louder, and suddenly attacked his mother. With the rope wrapped around her throat, he threw her to the ground with all his strength. Amelia's cries for life were swallowed by the metal that filled the room. At that moment, it was as if another entity had taken over Moisés. Darkness consumed everything. After ending the life of the person who loved him most, Moisés slept as if nothing had happened. The next day, he went to work. His friends noticed something strange. His eyes were empty, his smiles meaningless. Everyone attributed it to grief and drugs. No one imagined that such violence could have occurred. When he returned home, a horrifying reality awaited him. His mother's lifeless body was still in the living room. Moisés's mind began to formulate a diabolical plan. He grabbed a power saw, turned the music to full volume, and began dismembering her body in the bathroom. Some pieces were placed in the refrigerator. Others were treated according to the so-called rituals he had learned from the cult. He believed everything was under control, but reality was rapidly closing in. The apartment maintenance man, Epifanio Hernandez, rang the bell for a new sink installation, and Moisés stalled him each time. Neighbors had started to worry, having not seen Amelia for days. Moisés brushed off all questions with, "She's sick, resting." As the pressure mounted, panic grew. Moisés realized he needed to remove the body and thought he could not do it alone. The only person he could turn to for help was his cousin, Liliana Rivera. Liliana practiced Santeria. Moisés, thinking it was similar to Satanism, asked her, "What's the worst thing a Santeria practitioner could do?" Frightened, Liliana promised to come over immediately. Moisés met her at the door, and together they got into a car. Liliana constantly asked about Amelia. Moisés gave evasive answers, and a heavy suspicion settled in Liliana's heart. When she pressed him for the truth, Moisés confessed everything. Liliana was horrified by what she heard, but Moisés's next words terrified her even more. He said that after killing his mother, he felt at peace, saw himself like an angel, and had no remorse. Then calmly, he asked for her help. He said they needed to dispose of the body. Liliana refused. Shocked, she drove around the neighborhood for hours. Her only goal was clear: stop Moisés, turn him in to the police. When Moisés arrived at the Huntington Park police station, he stepped out of the car. Before entering, he called his father to tell him that Amelia was no longer alive. Then, at exactly 1 p.m., he walked through the doors and confessed everything of his own accord. Police officers immediately went to the apartment. Upon opening the door, they were met with deep silence and an indescribable stench. The refrigerator had been overturned, filled with dismembered body parts. The bathroom walls were covered in plastic, streaked with blood, and a saw lay on the floor, evidence of the horror. Satanic symbols, human bones, and bloody tools made the scene chillingly clear. Moisés openly admitted to killing and dismembering his mother. He had made no attempt to flee. For the police, this was no longer a missing person case. It was a fully detailed homicide. He was arrested without the possibility of bail. The dark path he had forged with his own hands had reached an irreversible end. On February 8, 2011, Moisés Meraz Espinoza was formally charged with murder. His detailed confession to the police was met with outright denial in court. He claimed innocence, setting the stage for a lengthy trial. He remained in custody at the Twin Towers Correctional Center, unable to pay his $1 million bail. During the proceedings that began in 2013, prosecutors emphasized that this was not a crime of passion, but a premeditated ritualistic killing. Evidence presented in court confirmed this. When the autopsy report was read, a deathly silence fell over the courtroom. The report included horrifying details. Fingertips removed individually, scalp peeled except for the eyelids, teeth extracted from the root. The prosecutor turned to Moisés and asked, "Why did you do this to your mother?" Moisés, without averting his gaze, replied, "She is no longer suffering." This was a purification. The courtroom reacted in shock. The prosecution called an expert in pagan and satanic symbols. The witness confirmed that the positioning of the body corresponded to high-level black magic rituals. Images recovered from Moisés's computer, engraved symbols around the house and in his cell, and tattoos on his body demonstrated that his dedication to darkness was not coincidental. The defense claimed it was all internet curiosity and insisted that modern Satanism rejects violence, arguing that the ritual claims were exaggerated. However, for the jury, the evidence pointed in only one direction. This murder was a calculated, deliberate act of brutality. The jury reached its verdict in just one day. Moisés Meraz Espinoza was found unanimously guilty of first-degree murder for killing his own mother, Amelia. Judge Thomas McNew read the verdict and stated, "This case is one of the most brutal I have encountered in my career." He then announced the sentence. Life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years, the judge concluded. "We may never understand why, but you will have plenty of time to think about it." Moisés remained silent. He stood, escorted out of the courtroom by officers, glancing briefly at his father and cousin Liliana, the only two people left in his life. His attorneys quickly filed an appeal, but the appellate court upheld the original ruling, confirming the sentence. Moisés Meraz Espinoza remains etched in memory as a chilling example of what can lurk in the darkest chasms of the human mind. He brutally murdered his own mother and attempted to present it as a supposed spiritual duty. Today, he is still behind bars, with the earliest possibility of rejoining society not considered until 25 years have passed. Yet, for most experts, one truth remains unchanged. This darkness exists not only behind prison bars, but also in the deepest shadows of human psychology. What do you think?
Did Moisés Meraz Espinoza receive the punishment he deserved? I want to hear your thoughts on this trial. See you in the next video. Stay safe.